Own Way, the podcast with me, your host, Kori McClurg.
Welcome back to Get Out of Your Own Way, the podcast. I'm Kori McClurg. So today I thought it might be helpful to just tell you a little bit about my origin story and how I got here to the point where I'm talking to you. To sort of take you back a few years, I was in a really, really dark place for a really long time. I can see now that I suffered from anxiety and depression. I had just a constant, stream of dialogue in my head, of just stress and fear and just a barrage of kind of negativity toward myself and sort of everything around me. I couldn't control what I ate or drank. Maybe I could for a while, but for a few days or even maybe weeks. But inevitably, I'd be back to kind of some unhealthiness. And, that made me feel more like eating and drinking to numb myself. I was constantly on the latest diet, because I was just convinced that I'd feel better if I could lose weight and just, be proud of what my outside looked like. But despite trying every diet, I just kept, gaining weight. Sure, I might lose a few pounds and I'd be happy with my results for whatever time I was able to kind of string that all together. But I just couldn't maintain it. And I'd do well for a while and then I'd, eat or drink off plan, if you will. And then I'd be, it really was like a black hole just opened up and kind of sucked me in. And, I'd be back to going to happy hours and eating bar food or vegging out on the couch, with my favorite takeout or half gallon of ice cream. And it was just this never ending cycle. I just felt like I was kind of trapped. Like I just had this never ending, hailstorm in my brain. And it just made me feel like I needed to control more and more of what I was doing on the outside, thinking that that was going to help me feel better on the inside. But when I couldn't control the outside, it would make me feel worse about my inside. And so it's literally this, I call it the shame cycle. I feel like crap. And so I try to control but I can't control. And then so I eat and drink to like numb that feeling, but that makes me feel even worse because I was eating and drinking and lacking of control. So I feel even more shameful and more self-loathing. And it just keeps, you're just in this never ending spiral. It just keeps going down and down and down. And, so I was undoubtedly had anxiety and depression. I did not seek that diagnosis because I just, I don't know. I thought that was something for other people. I don't, I thought mental health was something for other people. It was not something that I understood. But also I was suffering, physically in addition to just being overweight. My menstrual cycle was unbearable. My blood iron was also chronically low. I might literally have a few pain-free days, out of the month. If I got a whole good week, that was a win. But I, no kidding, had PMS for many days. I was bloated and in pain. And then my actual cycle was incredibly painful. And, my doctor just chalked up my low blood iron to this intense menstrual cycle that I had, and really didn't seek any other diagnosis or any other understanding of the issue. And this all just kind of just kept building on itself, and I was to the point where I was ready to remove myself from this earth. I mean, I was miserable, and I did not see how me continuing on was benefiting, certainly wasn't benefiting myself. I was miserable, and I wasn't benefiting anybody around me. And so I had conceived numerous times of like the best way to kill myself. That probably I lived in a very cold place in the mountains, and I thought, well, I could probably either kill myself with alcohol poisoning, a mix of alcohol poisoning and hypothermia. And I was sort of just waiting for like the right time to do that. But finally, one night I was traveling for work. I was up late because of a time zone change, and you kind of have that just uncomfortableness of traveling and whatnot. And I stumbled upon a couple of movies in my hotel room that just kind of started cluing me in about nutrition and how what we eat really has a huge impact, not only on our weight, but like the litany of lifestyle diseases that we're experiencing on a massive scale in the Western world. This really got me curious. I really started digging into the research. I was reading everything I could get my hands on in this area. And, all that definitely started helping me clean up my diet and making some significant changes. I watched, there's documentaries and movies that helped me like continue my understanding of nutrition, of agriculture, of the food system, and all that just kind of kept propelling me forward. And of course, over the course of this, the changes in my diet fixed the hormone issues that were causing my cycles to be so painful. So I knew I was on to something there. I was seeing real physical changes. But I still continued to struggle with consistency. And I struggled to implement all the changes in my diet that I knew that the data showed would help me just disease proof myself. Not to mention kind of losing the last 20 or 30 pounds. So I kind of fumbled around. I was certainly improved for sure, but I like that last bit. I couldn't close the gap on that last bit, and I fumbled around that way probably for 10 years. I kept trying to optimize my health and my weight with different fitness programs or regimens. I'm sure you've heard of things like 75 hard. And I'd do it for a while, and then I'd fall off the wagon. And then I had the real epiphany, and it was like someone, turned up the dimmer switch and the room got way brighter. And that epiphany was the first time I heard the term emotion-based goal as an alternative to a behavior-based goal. And, the idea being, how do I want to feel about a particular thing instead of what do I want my behavior or my outcome to be? Now, I probably need to back up just a little bit to explain why it was such a lightning bolt. When I was a kid, I got the message that emotions were just not okay. So I literally spent 40 years trying to figure out how to not have emotions, and just pursue discipline. Yeah, as you can probably imagine, that was not successful. And it resulted in me just spending countless hours in therapy, and not being able to maintain a relationship. And this real denial of emotion just made me constantly feel like I was a failure because I could never meet my behavior based goal. As much as I pursued discipline, I couldn't achieve it. I could never stick to, the diet, whatever the diet du jour was. I could never consistently stop drinking, even though I told myself I was done 100 times. And even though I knew what all the data said. So when I heard this idea that I could change how I felt about something and then my behavior would follow, I thought, damn, that's actually interesting. That's a new idea. And I'm kind of a scientist at heart. I'm a veteran of the United States Air Force. Right after college, I was in the Air Force, and I that started my career as a scientist, as an analyst, in and ultimately in various capacities. So, I love anything that helps me figure out problems. Over the years, I earned certifications in personal training and nutrition to help me understand and solve my problems. But this final piece, this kind of psychological piece, which ultimately ended up in me getting a certificate in affective liminal psychology, this is really what allowed me to bring everything I knew about nutrition together with what I now know about our brains and this mindset and psychology that just brought it all together for me. And I think it's a little unique in that it's, to my knowledge, me bringing these things together is what's a little unique about what I've written and about the program I developed and just sort of everything that I now kind of am putting out into the world. And so, things just really, really clicked on for me, and they just have kept getting better. I mean, my angst, my anxiety, my depression, my self-loathing, my weight, it all just kind of started to fall away. And I've just kept feeling better every day since then. I mean, this has been years now, and I don't have this constant barrage of just fullness, if you will, in my brain. I mean, it was that constant talking that goes on. If you have anxiety, you know what I'm talking about. It's just this constant, you don't get any reprieve from this constant talking and the angst that goes along with that. And I mean, that's gone. I don't have that anymore. And it's a relief. It's one of those things where it's almost like if you've ever worn a weighted vest or, ankle weights or something, you almost get so accustomed to it, you don't realize that you're carrying it around. But then when you take it off, you're like, oh my gosh, I feel so much lighter. I mean, that's what it feels like to get rid of that anxiety and the self-loathing and the depression. And then, the physical elements that take care of themselves, once I brought all that together. Yeah. And so I've just been, it's literally every day has been better and better once I was able to bring all these things together. I can tell you it's been a long, long journey. And, my goal is to for you not to go through that long journey, right? Like, is for you to just like fast forward and take, a huge step forward without having to just, I was picking pieces, right, from a whole bunch of different places, and I had to like get it all together and organize it and then fit it all in, to have it make sense for me and for me to be able to act upon it. And so, what I I am trying to offer to people is, you don't have to go through all that. You don't have to, it doesn't have to take, 10, 20 years. I've organized it for you. I've put it all in a book, and I've put it into a program where it's like just a step by step and a slow progression, so that you can just have these, micro changes every day, and they ultimately add up to something incredibly life changing. So, yeah, like I said, I thought it would be helpful for you to understand that I have been, probably where you are, or at least had some overlapping experience in just feeling so low and feeling like you've tried everything and feeling constantly disappointed in yourself and constantly feeling like a failure and not understanding why you can't figure this out. I know how to do things. Why can I not figure this out? I know logically what I need to do. I know logically, what the research says. Why can I not be consistent in this? And it's a painful place to be. So I offer to you that, you can effectively eject yourself, from that painful place and move on to, much more productive things and feeling good and not having the constant churn, in your brain. So I hope that's helpful. Hope that's helpful for you to know, where I came from. So I hope you have a great day, and I hope to, see you again soon.